Get ready to declutter and downsize like a pro. Join me as I reveal my secret decluttering and downsizing formula for van life success. Say goodbye to clutter and hello to freedom on the road. So buckle up. It's time to simplify your life. By letting go of excess stuff, we gain so much more. It's all about prioritizing our experiences over our possessions. We're going to talk about all the things today, from belongings and clothing, heirloom and sentimental items, photos, even important papers, and your current house and car. So let's get started. Downsizing can be a long, sorted process, and how you choose to handle your stuff depends on your situation and how attached you are to your stuff. To start, you'll want to ask yourself some questions. First off, how long do you plan to be on the road? Do you plan to live in your van full time, or is this just a trial run? Are you wanting to have a home base, or do you want to be completely nomadic? And do you plan to return to the same geographical location once you decide you're finished traveling? Knowing the answer to these questions is important and will help you determine what to do with your excess stuff. But it's more than just a simple answer to some simple questions. So keep the answers to those questions in the back of your mind as we move forward. We'll talk more about storage alternatives later on, but you should know from the onset, my recommendation is always going to be to sell or get rid of the excess. We all have good intentions when we put stuff in storage, and the reality is life continues to change. The chance of those intentions becoming reality are very low. I know you think, once I'm done with van life, I'll buy a house and I want to have grandma's buffet on display. But after paying storage for 5 years, you make the trek across the country back to where your storage unit is to pick up grandma's buffet, only to find out that water damage has kind of had its way with it. Or maybe it's just not the style you remember or the style that you currently want. And so you toss it away and head back across the country empty-handed and out a lot of storage money. Downsizing for van life is very different than just downsizing to a smaller house. Several years ago, I downsized from a 1,600 square foot house to a 399 square foot tiny house. And while that was challenging, nothing compares to downsizing from a 399 square foot tiny house to the 40-some square foot I have now. Whether you start in a particular room or with a particular category, it really doesn't matter. Eventually, you're going to have to look at every single item. So when you're looking at your items, you want to ask yourself, is this valuable? Is this useful to this season of my life? Is it sentimental, historical, or irreplaceable? Why have you chosen to keep this item up until this point? And is it something I absolutely want and need? And you will repeat this process over and over and over again. So let's get sorting. You want to designate a spot or a box for the items that you sort into categories like sell, donate, give away to friends, recycle, or trash. And sort through every item and decide which category it should go in. As soon as you start to accumulate things in your sale pile, make sure you start listing those, whether you list it on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, or any other number of sale apps that there are. You want to get those things gone and out of your space. And so as you start to sell things and see that cash add up, it motivates you to get rid of more. Take your donation pile to donate frequently. Don't let the items stack up. The more room you make, the more progress you'll see, and the more motivation you'll have. Sometimes I was just dropping off a small bag of items at Goodwill, but each trip counted, and I ended up on a first name basis with the Goodwill guys. You could also choose to have a garage sale or lay items out and ask your friends over and say, hey, is there anything here you want? Some of the items that I got rid of are in my friends' homes today, and that feels so good. For instance, I had a Kelly Ray Roberts piece of artwork that I really can't display in my van. And so my friend Mary Beth now has that hanging on her wall behind her couch. It looks beautiful, and she enjoys it just as much as I do, and I get to enjoy it when I'm there. When you're done sorting, you will do it again and again and again and again and again I lost track of the number of times I went through this sorting exercise, but it works. Eventually, if nothing else, you get tired of moving these things around and having to resort them. Slowly, your mindset changes and you start to put things into perspective and realize just how much progress you're making and what is really important to keep. And if you're having problems, invite a friend over or have somebody help you through that process. My mom was instrumental in helping me sort through these things. And I had some girlfriends when I was still in South Carolina that were great. And they were able to ask me different items. So why are you going to keep that? And so it just really helped me move through that process a lot faster. So bring your friends in and let them help you. The less connection and attachment you have to your stuff, the faster this process will go. Let's talk about some specific items. Let's start with clothing. Clothing has been my biggest nemesis when it's come to downsizing, and I think I finally defeated it though. Even if you're like me and you don't have to wear the latest fashion trend or have a different pair of shoes for every outfit, this still could prove to be difficult to you. It really surprised me how difficult this category was. I've gone through my clothes time and time again, each time getting rid of a little bit more. But I think after living in my van for a few months and moving things around, always feeling like it's unorganized and just creating this mess, taking up way too much space that I'd like to use for other things, I was ready to part with the majority. And after all, you realize that you really do tend to wear the same things over and over again. When I got to my parents in Nebraska, I took all my clothes out of my van and dumped it on the couch. 90% of what I put on the couch, I had not even worn in the months since I started van life. After downsizing my clothes, once again, I was able to get rid of about 23 different shirts and several pairs of pants. So it's all neatly organized now. It will fit nicely in my van. This is everything except for socks and underwear and that kind of thing. Let's talk about sentimental items. I'm a person that rarely gets attached to things, but there are things that I've been attached to. So for this category, my suggestion would be to lay out all of your sentimental items or your keepsake items on the floor where you can see everything. You might be surprised at just how big of an area your sentimental items take up. So pick out anything that you look at and say, why was I keeping that? Or things that were broken, or just the obvious things that can be tossed in the trash right away. Now collect all of the things that you were keeping for your kids or for your grandkids, put them in a box and deliver it to them. It's time for them to be the keeper of those items. Are there items that are important to you or sentimental that might also be important and sentimental to someone else, maybe a sibling or a cousin? Pack those items up and maybe it's their turn to keep that type of stuff. Since we grew up in an age before digital photography, I'm betting, like me, you have a lot of photos. There are a lot of services that will digitize those photos for you. But what I did was I took pictures of my pictures. I laid them out and took a picture with my phone of them. And I took pictures of scrapbook pages or photo albums, anything that I wanted to save. And then I tossed out the rest. I actually wish I had done this long before van life because I actually look at them a lot more. I can search for them in my photos. You can actually zoom in on them too, which is kind of fun. I also did this with keepsake items. I didn't necessarily have to have that physical item. Having a picture of it was good enough for me. I had a bunch of glass awards that I had won during my years in corporate life, and they had my name engraved on them. The only person they were important to was me. So I took a picture of him. I still have that memory. I just don't have the physical item. I had all of my old yearbooks. I took pictures of some of the messages that were written inside and tossed them into the trash. You can actually get most old high school yearbooks available online. I think it's classmates.com that has those all digitized. Handmade items and heirlooms can sometimes be hard to get rid of. And so look at those items and see if they can be repurposed in some way. This is something that my friend made for me that has different lace on it, and it's something that I hang in my van. So maybe if you have an old christening gown, old wedding gowns that is your great-great-grandmother's and you just have a hard time parting with it, cut a piece of lace off and make something out of it that is actually usable today. You might have to get creative with some items, but that's okay. Take a look at them, see what you can do. Just remember, the memories are always with you, regardless of where the physical item is. The item that I have struggled most with in getting rid of is my childhood blankie. I have carried this rag of a blanket around for now 48 years. This used to be flannel and have my name embroidered on it. You can't even tell what it is, but I have not been able to get rid of it. I laid in bed last night and I kept asking myself, why this? Why can I not get rid of this blanket? And it finally came to me that this blankie has been with me since my very beginning. And I had a traumatic childhood, and this blankie has always been with me. This blanket holds so many of my tears, of my screams. It's a lot of times the only thing that I had that was a comfort to me. And so realizing that just really made a difference for me. It was like if I threw that out without having that realization, it was like saying that it didn't exist. And me acknowledging what this blanket was for me, what it meant for me, is now allowed me to get rid of it. And so the only reason I have it here is for filming this video. And so now I'm going to get rid of it. And I don't know, maybe I'll have a ceremony to get rid of it. I will burn it or something. So you might have some of those items that you have a hard time getting rid of. And my point is that you may have to sit with some things for a while. I never understood the meaning behind why I couldn't get rid of this silly blanket. And so sit with it as long as you need to. Ask yourself, why is this so hard for me to get rid of? And you'll know when the time is right. Let's move on to important papers. Digitize, digitize, digitize. In this world, we have all sorts of resources to have electronic documents. I use Microsoft OneDrive for all of my documents, and all of my pictures, all of my documents are all in one place. I know Google Drive does the same thing, and I'm sure there's other softwares that do this, but make it a point to go paperless. Now, just because you go paperless doesn't mean that there are not items or specific paperwork that you need to keep actual physical copies of. Titles to vehicles, passports, deeds to land, birth certificates, death certificates, wills, social security cards. You get the idea. And so for physical documents or other keepsakes, I gave myself a space that I could keep this stuff in. When I was 9 years old, I got a small red suitcase for my birthday, and you'll see it in a picture here. And this was long gone, but I still remembered that little suitcase, and I knew it was the perfect size to keep important papers and any of the keepsakes that I chose to keep. So there was no reason why I would need a space larger than that. And so I found this suitcase online, and I wasn't real hip on the going to grandma's sticker that's blazoned across the front. And so I started covering it with my own stickers. It has all of my important papers in and keepsakes. If it wasn't fitting in that suitcase, I knew that there was some more purging that I needed to do. Now, the only thing that I still had that was not in compliance with that rule that I made was this silly blanket. Now that I'm getting rid of that, I will be abiding by the rule I made of everything has to fit in that suitcase. So do what works for you, but find a container or your little red suitcase. Let's talk about small kitchen appliances. This can be a category that's really difficult to tackle when you're trying to downsize for a van life. Think about currently what small kitchen appliances you have. You probably have a coffee maker, a blender, a crock pot, a toaster, maybe a toaster oven, a food processor, an air fryer, a rice cooker. You have plenty of options when it comes to small kitchen appliances. And those are all really great conveniences when you're living in a house. when you're living in a van, you know, you have to trade convenience for space. And so when I started van life, I was not going to get rid of my coffee maker. I had a Keurig coffee maker, and I did get a smaller coffee maker, but that was a non-negotiable. I also wanted to keep my Ninja blender because, you know, I like to make smoothies, and you can't make a good smoothie without a good Ninja blender. And I found a small air fryer because, you know, what can't you do with an air fryer? And then a rice cooker. A rice cooker, gosh, you can warm stuff up in it and cook rice. That was my 4 appliances: my coffee maker, my Ninja blender, my small air fryer, and my rice cooker. My first week of van life, I wanted coffee. And that meant I was going to have to get out of my van, go around to the back and get my coffee maker out, come back up, get it set up, all that kind of thing. And it was kind of cold outside, so I thought, well, maybe I won't have coffee this morning. But I did remember to get it out later in the day and have it up front so the next morning I could have my cup of coffee. And I got everything ready, plugged it in, and started the brew cycle. As I started the brew cycle, I had 44% of my battery, and I watched my battery slowly drain. 44%, 43%, 42%. Okay, it was getting serious. When you have a power source and you know that you have a certain amount of power, you're kind of stingy with what you use your power for. And it was draining fast. It finally stopped when it got to 36%. So 8% of my battery was gone in less than 5 minutes. And that was just for 1 cup of coffee. So I was definitely not going to have another cup of coffee. Coffee maker, gone. I do still like to have my coffee in the morning, so I found an alternative for making coffee that works just as well and uses a fraction of the power. So I made a video on that, and you can click up here to watch that video or watch it later. I'll put the link to it in the description below. I also had my Ninja blender. I was at the grocery store thinking, gosh, a smoothie sounds really good. And so maybe I should buy some things to make a smoothie. I wasn't really sure where I had put it in my van, and it was the first time I was getting ready to use it. I finally found it and unburied it, and now my clothes were all a mess. I realized that I didn't have the blade part of the blender, which really is important. I thought it had to be near the same spot that I found the rest of the blender, but it was going to make even a bigger mess by searching through that. And then the thought of how quickly my 1400 watt coffee maker drained down my battery, I figured my 900 watt Ninja blender was probably going to do the same thing. So Ninja blender, gone. The convenience of small kitchen appliances was no longer convenient, and having the extra space was more valuable to me. When you start van life, sometimes your perception is not really what reality is. And so it's not that you can't have those things. You definitely can, but you have to prioritize your space and the power that you have in determining what you really want, what you really need. I still have my small air fryer. I still have my rice cooker. Plates, silverware, bowls, and what I'll call kitchen accessories is something that you tend to overestimate what you're going to need. Yes, you need those things, but do you really need 4 plates and 3 different size mixing bowls? When you live van life, everyone knows that space is limited. And if you camp with others, it's just a known fact that you are responsible for your own dinnerware. 1 plate per person is really sufficient, and get all the collapsible bowls you want, but you will likely only use 1 because it serves all of the purposes. So keep this in the back of your mind while you're downsizing. Within the first 2 weeks of starting van life, I did purchase my rooftop storage box, and that has been a lifesaver. While I had room for everything in my van, it fit in my van. It was really inconvenient because I kept having to move things to get to what I wanted. Even though I was making fairly routine stops at donation boxes, I still had too much stuff. So that alleviated some of that space concern by putting lesser used items up there. Now, as far as renting a storage unit, just remember that the storage rental industry in the United States is a $40 billion industry. If you don't know how long you're going to do van life, or if you are just trying it out, or maybe you're going to be returning to the same area when you finish van life, maybe storage makes sense, but really think about the cost involved. If you need climate controlled or humidity controlled storage, that's even going to add up more. And I've stored things over the years in short-term storage, even indoors. You still have all the problems with rodents. So think about what you're storing and what that is going to be like when you get that out of storage. Add up the cost. If you plan to store things for a year, figure out how much the cost of storing is, and then weigh that closely. If you have a relatively small amount of items to store, a safe deposit box might be a good solution. Safe deposit boxes are good for important papers, jewelry, small heirloom items. So think about that as an alternative. What are you going to do with your home? If you decide that you don't want to sell your home, maybe you love your home, or you're just doing van life as a trial, you may want to consider renting it out. It will help cover some of the bills, and you might even make some money. Plus, if you decide that you're done with van life, transitioning back will be pretty painless. Another idea, if you are not looking to travel full time, or you want to have that home base, consider renting out a room to somebody you trust, a friend, a family member, and they get to live there alone while you are traveling, and you have the peace of mind that somebody is there taking care of your house. You could also choose to list it on Airbnb or VRBO. The services do cost money, but the nice thing is that these companies will take care of all of the logistics for you, keeping your rental calendar and hiring people to clean. What if you own another car besides your van? Well, the options for an additional vehicle are the same that we have been discussing as the rest of your stuff. Store it, keep it at your home, or sell it. If you know that you're going to be coming back and needing a car regularly, or if you're just traveling part-time and will be back for a few weeks or a few months at a time, keeping it makes sense. But why insure a vehicle if you don't use it regularly? Sell it and put your money towards a van. The nice thing with me being in a minivan is it's my regular vehicle. It is the vehicle I live in. It's the vehicle that serves all of the purposes. Downsizing and decluttering while living van life is a continual process. Your priorities are sure to change, and things that you thought you would never get rid of are long gone. Part of van life is living minimally. We traded everyday conveniences and routines for the freedom and adventure of living on the road. So enjoy the journey. And until next time, stay wild and stay free.